Welcome. Today we are looking at evolutionary theories. This is topic 2 in your SS3 biology series. This topic is frequently tested in objective questions in your examinations. Pay close attention. Let us begin. First, let me explain what evolution is. Evolution is the gradual change in the characteristics of a population over time. It is the process by which species change over generations. Evolution explains the diversity of life on Earth. It explains how organisms are related. It explains how new species arise. Evolution is a fundamental concept in biology. It is supported by evidence from many fields. These include paleontology, comparative anatomy, embryology, and molecular biology. Understanding evolution is essential for understanding biology. Now, let me explain the history of evolutionary thought. Early ideas about evolution were proposed by ancient Greek philosophers. However, these ideas were not based on evidence. In the 18th century, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck proposed a theory of evolution. Lamarck's theory was based on the inheritance of acquired characteristics. He believed that organisms could pass on traits they acquired during their lifetime. For example, he believed giraffes developed long necks by stretching to reach leaves. This theory was later disproved. In the 19th century, Charles Darwin proposed the theory of evolution by natural selection. Darwin's theory was based on evidence from his voyage on the HMS Beagle. He observed finches on the Galapagos Islands. He noticed that finches had different beak shapes. These beaks were adapted to different food sources. Darwin proposed that species change over time through natural selection. This was a revolutionary idea. Now, let me explain Lamarck's theory in detail. Lamarck's theory had two main ideas. The first idea was the law of use and disuse. Lamarck believed that organs that are used become stronger and more developed. Organs that are not used become weaker and smaller. The second idea was the inheritance of acquired characteristics. Lamarck believed that traits acquired during an organism's lifetime could be passed to offspring. For example, he believed that a blacksmith's strong muscles would be inherited by his children. Lamarck's theory was eventually rejected. There is no evidence that acquired traits are inherited. Traits are determined by genes, not by use or disuse. However, Lamarck's theory was important. It was one of the first attempts to explain evolution. Now, let me explain Darwin's theory in detail. Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection has several key points. The first point is variation. Individuals within a population vary in their traits. These variations are inherited. The second point is overproduction. Populations produce more offspring than can survive. This leads to competition for resources. The third point is survival of the fittest. Individuals with advantageous traits are more likely to survive and reproduce. These traits are called adaptations. The fourth point is inheritance. Advantageous traits are passed to offspring. Over many generations, these traits become more common. The fifth point is speciation. Over time, populations become so different that they form new species. This is evolution by natural selection. Darwin's theory was supported by evidence from many sources. It is the foundation of modern biology. Now, let me explain the evidence for evolution. There are several lines of evidence. The first is paleontology. Fossils show that organisms have changed over time. Fossils provide a record of evolutionary history. Transitional fossils show intermediate forms. The second is comparative anatomy. Similar structures in different organisms suggest common ancestry. Homologous structures are structures with similar origin but different function. Examples include the forelimbs of mammals. They have the same basic structure but different functions. Analogous structures are structures with similar function but different origin. Examples include the wings of birds and insects. The third is embryology. Embryos of different organisms show similarities. This suggests common ancestry. The fourth is molecular biology. DNA and protein sequences are similar in related organisms. This provides evidence of common ancestry. The fifth is biogeography. The distribution of species on Earth reflects evolutionary history. Island species are often related to nearby mainland species. This suggests that they evolved from mainland ancestors. Now, let me explain natural selection in detail. Natural selection is the process by which organisms with advantageous traits survive and reproduce. There are three types of natural selection. The first is directional selection. This favours one extreme phenotype. The population shifts in one direction. The second is stabilising selection. This favours the intermediate phenotype. The extremes are selected against. The population remains stable. The third is disruptive selection. This favours both extreme phenotypes. The intermediate phenotype is selected against. The population splits into two groups. Natural selection is the main mechanism of evolution. It acts on variation within populations. Now, let me explain the sources of variation. Variation is the raw material for evolution. There are several sources of variation. The first is mutation. Mutations are changes in DNA. They create new alleles. They are the ultimate source of variation. The second is sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction creates new combinations of alleles. This increases variation. The third is gene flow. Gene flow is the movement of genes between populations. It introduces new alleles. The fourth is genetic drift. Genetic drift is random changes in allele frequencies. It is more significant in small populations. These sources of variation provide the raw material for natural selection. Now, let me explain speciation. Speciation is the formation of new species. A species is a group of organisms that can interbreed. Speciation occurs when populations become reproductively isolated. There are two main types of speciation. The first is allopatric speciation. This occurs when populations are separated by a physical barrier. Examples include mountains, rivers, and oceans. The separated populations evolve independently. They become different species. The second is sympatric speciation. This occurs when populations are not separated by a physical barrier. Speciation occurs within the same area. This is less common. Reproductive isolation can be caused by differences in behaviour, timing, or genetics. Now, let me explain the evidence for natural selection. There are several examples of natural selection. The first is industrial melanism in peppered moths. In England, the peppered moth had two forms, light and dark. Before the Industrial Revolution, light moths were common. They were camouflaged against lichen-covered trees. During the Industrial Revolution, trees became darkened by soot. Dark moths became more common. They were camouflaged against dark trees. This is an example of directional selection. The second is antibiotic resistance in bacteria. Bacteria evolve resistance to antibiotics. This is an example of natural selection. The third is pesticide resistance in insects. Insects evolve resistance to pesticides. This is another example of natural selection. These examples demonstrate the process of natural selection. Now let me explain the modern synthesis. The modern synthesis combines Darwin's theory with genetics. It was developed in the early 20th century. It explains evolution in terms of changes in gene frequencies. Populations evolve, not individuals. Evolution occurs through natural selection, mutation, gene flow, and genetic drift. The modern synthesis is the foundation of modern evolutionary biology. It provides a comprehensive explanation of evolution. Now, let me explain the importance of evolution. Evolution is important for several reasons. First, it explains the diversity of life. It explains how species are related. Second, it explains adaptations. It explains why organisms are suited to their environments. Third, it supports medicine. Understanding evolution helps us understand antibiotic resistance. It helps us understand the evolution of diseases. Fourth, it supports agriculture. Understanding evolution helps us breed crops and livestock. Fifth, it supports conservation. Understanding evolution helps us conserve biodiversity. Evolution is a central concept in biology. Now let me explain misconceptions about evolution. There are several misconceptions. The first is that evolution is just a theory. In science, a theory is a well-supported explanation. Evolution is supported by extensive evidence. The second is that evolution is random. Mutations are random. Natural selection is not random. It favours advantageous traits. The third is that evolution has a goal. Evolution does not have a goal. It is not directed toward perfection. The fourth is that humans evolved from monkeys. Humans and monkeys share a common ancestor. Humans did not evolve from monkeys. These misconceptions are common. Understanding evolution helps correct them. Now let me give you sample exam questions. Define evolution. Evolution is the gradual change in the characteristics of a population over time. State Lamarck's theory. Lamarck's theory proposed inheritance of acquired characteristics. Explain Darwin's theory of natural selection. Darwin's theory states that organisms with advantageous traits survive and reproduce. List the evidence for evolution. Evidence includes fossils, comparative anatomy, embryology, molecular biology, and biogeography. Distinguish between directional, stabilizing, and disruptive selection. Directional selection favours one extreme. Stabilizing selection favours the intermediate. Disruptive selection favours both extremes. Explain speciation. Speciation is the formation of new species through reproductive isolation. Let me summarise. Evolution is the gradual change in populations over time. Lamarck proposed inheritance of acquired characteristics. Darwin proposed natural selection. Evidence for evolution includes fossils, anatomy, embryology, molecular biology, and biogeography. Natural selection acts on variation. Sources of variation include mutation, sexual reproduction, gene flow, and genetic drift. Speciation occurs through reproductive isolation. The modern synthesis combines Darwin's theory with genetics. Evolution is important for understanding biology, medicine, agriculture, and conservation. Practice these concepts. When you have them down, move to topic 3.